today, new restrictions dubbed the Rule of Six. It came into force, but a leading Oxford professor says there is no scientific evidence that this is needed.
Professor Carl Heneghan says that the impact will be minimal and that Prime Minister Boris Johnson needs to bin it now. And he joins us. And thank you very much indeed for talking to us today. Let me start off by reading the response from number 10 to your views. They say, if we are to beat the virus, then everyone at all times needs to limit social contact as much as possible. We're seeing daily case numbers rise rapidly across the country, which is why the government, CMO, the Chief Medical Officer, CSA, Chief Scientific Advisor, jointly agreed the changes we set out on Wednesday. The rules have been simplified and strengthened so they are easy to understand and so the police can identify and disperse illegal gatherings. So what's wrong with the Rule of Six?
Well, look, last time I was on the programme, we had this conversation where we talked about the rules have become too confusing and people were, in places like Oldham, getting really confused and not clear what they should be doing, when they should be presenting for the test and trace, and actually what they can do in their household. So what's happened here is the government has said our rules are too confusing. But what it should have done then is say, look, we really do need to stick to the social distancing. But actually, this Rule of Six has just been made up in a committee. As you say, there's no evidence. And in effect, what it does is, and it doesn't suppress the virus, it may stop it and slow it down by a day or two. So in effect, what's going to happen is going to happen anyhow. The key is the message is the social distancing. And what you do is have to explain that to people. What does it mean? How do you go about your daily lives? And the rule where we were at 30 was adequately fine for that. What we're doing is losing the trust of the people at the moment.
So therefore, OK, because, I mean, obviously everybody's trying to do their best. Everybody's trying to do their bit. Us as individuals, I think we're trying to pick our way through these rules here and work out what we can do for the best. So in your opinion, what should we be doing?
So the encouragement of social distance is incredibly important. So as I go to work today, I'm not going to go up and shake people's hand. Wherever I can maintain my 2 meters distance, I'm going to do that. In effect, I'm also going to wash my hands more regularly. And also, I'm going to limit some of the contact I would normally do. But look, I'm getting loads of messages from people saying, I want to go to Grandma's birthday. There's 8 of us. There's 3 grandchildren. It's now called off. You can still do that separately, but you just can't do it all together. So that's where you get this message of, this is now confusing. And people, how long can they maintain it for? Because there may come a time when we do need people to respond in a more restrictive way, but it isn't now.
The thing is that we've seen over the weekend people taking advantage, right, OK, let's all get together now before we can't on Monday, and you know, sort of huge crowds gathering of revellers enjoying the sunshine. There has to be, surely there has to be a number. There has to be, because people do break the rules. That's why a further 3,330 positive cases were recorded in the UK on Sunday, the 3rd consecutive day in which cases have been over 3,000. I mean, there's a reason for that, isn't there?
Yeah, but what you've done is, you see, we've had an August where you've gone and had Rishi's Eat Out to scheme, incredibly successful. On the bank holiday Monday, everywhere was packed out. Then you've had schools go back. So you're going to get a rise in cases. You're going to get a rise in all acute respiratory infection cases between now and December. But what you're saying is exactly the problem that's now occurring. You're going to have a huge spike this weekend of people meeting, and then you're going to have, how long is it going to last before the government's going to have to cave in again? In fact, the number in Sweden has been consistent throughout, 50 people. We could have stayed with 30 people. And you know there's a problem because across Ireland, Scotland and Wales, we're all doing it slightly differently. When we do it differently, it tells you there's no evidence to inform the actual policy.
And so, I mean, we've been talking about this second wave. There's going to be a second wave. In your opinion, do you believe that to be the case?
Well, you started the programme out with people having huge anxiety. At the moment, it's uncertain what's going to happen next. The reassuring issue, though, is as the cases have gone up, the deaths have remained lower, and they're much lower than March and April, and we're much better prepared. Therefore, there is some uncertainty over the next month or two what's going to happen. As universities open, as businesses get more back to normal, we're just going to have to see for a few weeks. But what we can't do is then say, well, just in case, we're going to now lock down. It could be as we go into the winter, we see rising cases, but not the same impact. That will be a really good outcome. In the next few weeks, we'll be able to see what that looks like going forward.
How accurate do you think the numbers are, the figures that we're being given?
Look, the figures throughout this pandemic have been very difficult to ascertain exactly what's going on. The death data now is in a good state. So we look at the death data, but there are problems in terms of admissions and the number of people in hospitals, particularly in the devolved nations because they're counted differently. And there's a problem particularly in the test data. One of the things we want to know is something called the cycle threshold. It tells you how much virus in effect people have on board. And this is particularly important in the younger people. But one of the things I am concerned about, and I've mentioned on this programme before, is where we've got a problem rising right now is in care homes. They're the most vulnerable. And that's where your testing should be and where all of your efforts are to shield that population.
And what about masks? What's your opinion on masks? Well, for a long time, we weren't expected to wear masks at all. Obviously, those rules have changed, and now we are, if we're going to the supermarket, for instance. Does that help?
Well, my job is to be Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine and inform the debate. If you look for high-quality evidence, as the Deputy CMO said, actually it's missing. It's not clear whether they benefit or harm us. But if you look, they were introduced in the 27th of March. Since then, cases have risen. What we've also seen with masks is a reduction in hand washing and a reduction in social distancing has occurred, and that's come through the YouGov poll. So there's a sense with masks that somehow you are safer, and actually what can happen is people can risk compensate and get rid of some of the important measures. So I am still for hand washing and the social distancing. What I'd like us to do is to develop an evidence base for the use of masks. So if we're going to use them in schools, we need to do some research to work out, do they actually make a difference or not?
We were sort of threatened, really, that if you don't stick to these rules, and we've now got all these marshals, like a dad's army, who are going to report us to the police if we break the rules. But is another lockdown inevitable?
Well, the first thing is I have a problem with this sort of stick approach to what we're talking about. One of the key areas here is that young people are getting the infection. What we have to do is take them on board and bring them with us. We have to explain to them why social distancing matters. If suddenly we're in a police state where marshals are coming down on them, how are they going to think about their role in society? How are we helping them? So I think, look, we have to change the emphasis to support why we need to bring you along. Second is, if we carry on this path, as we are doing now, my concern is once we see measures are not working, then we'll have to get more restrictive measures. And you're right, we could end up in another lockdown, which is devastating for the economy, but also for our social well-being.
OK. All right, Professor, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure we'll be speaking again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.